decidimos a nombre de la universidad, de la escuela, en particular el programa de un agradecimiento enorme a la embajada de la allá en Knikker. Aquí compartimos sus ideas con nosotros un poco para contextualizarnos, ya ven que es periodista y editor. Trabajó con Públicas, ¿no? ¿Colas o colas? Colas. Colas. Ah, okay. Thank you. Colas. Construyendo como una especie de comunicaciones de la empresa. Desde el 2008 trabaja con MVRDV en la elaboración de exposiciones y catálogos con las medidas de desarrollo de estrategias de negocios. Como ustedes saben, pues MVRDV está expandiendo rápidamente hacia nuevos mercados y está enfocándose en los a otros aspectos. Pues nada, quiero dejarlos con Jan. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
All right. That's a bit loud. Hi there, how are you? We can start?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me here. It's a great honor to be in your beautiful university. I've seen your building a few times already during this week, and it sticks out for being so incredibly new and clean and concrete. And then you come in, you have the beautiful brick again. Normally I walk around during lectures, but there's a chair, so I'll just use that. I feel very elevated now. Okay, no? Is this working? No. Here? Can you hear me now? No. Where? This? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Kind of? Yeah? Okay, well, thank you. It's always this thing, sometimes people call MVRDV star architects, and if you see how many people sometimes come to lectures, you might believe that you're important and a star, but I can assure you that we're not paid like stars, or that we are absolutely not stars. And the big criticism about star architects is always done to some kind of country that they don't know, like let's say Colombia, and that they then just build something like a white building or a blob building, or whatever they do without any context. This is why I want to talk to you about contextualism in our work, and how we try to always respond to our clients and the local culture. We are here because of this pavilion, which was basically an action from our government. They wanted to connect better with Colombia, and they want to the Dutch Catholic literature with mostly Catholic literature, actually. It's the Dutch literature is either about sex or about hating your father, and there's a lot of that now translated and ready for you to buy. It was called Hola Holanda, and therefore MVRDV was brought, and we have the great opportunity to share what we do with you, and we see what you have here, what great architecture and initiatives you take. The Netherlands are a bit different than Colombia. We don't have any mountains. Our tallest mountain is 123 meters. You wouldn't probably call it a mountain. So this is what we do. We have these endless cities, get clustered together. We don't have a metropolis, but in the center of our metropolitan region, we have 4 cities that host together 6 million inhabitants. And everywhere in between you have people. So wherever you go in the Netherlands, there are people. And the density is pretty low, and you see that architecture really defines your horizon. So if you have ugly architecture in the Netherlands, this is all you see around you. Whereas in Bogota, you can have an ugly architecture, but behind it you see the beautiful mountains. So you might not get depressed because of that. Maybe you also don't have a time to get depressed in this country because you're struggling with survival, but the Netherlands are one of the countries with the highest use of Prozac in the world. So this is where we come from, and when we started the office in '93, we wanted to do something about these conditions, and we wanted to actually make them denser, just to be happier. Density doesn't necessarily is not always good. Huh? You have these places in Hong Kong that you really can't quite grasp, and people live in these places like this. 3 people in I don't know, 9 square meters or so. So this is certainly not what we mean with good density. Good density is something like this. Our for the Expo 2000 in Hanover, which is a series of Dutch landscapes. We just stack them on top of each other. We're running out of land, so why don't we just create new land by stacking it? If the Earth has no more space, let's just build another floor on top of it. So this is the general idea, that you create artificial nature, and then you see that on the 5th floor of this building you have a forest. Forest worked very well. We then translate this kind of density into buildings. Here you see a design for 3 towers in Amsterdam, which will be basically very dense, but the apartments will offer more or less the same quality as a suburb. Now, yesterday I saw this beautiful tower by your architect Salmona, is that the word? Yeah. And so you already know this, so you can do this. You don't need us. But we also do things like this. This is a vertical village where people could actually design their own house and then just buy themselves a plot on an elevator shaft. As they come in apartments, rich people on top, poor people below, and this could then look like this, but everybody could have his own dream house. Yeah, as very young architects, we were already commissioned this building. This was our first building ever, a public television broadcasting station, and it revolutionized in a way the way that the Dutch people work. From that moment on, there were lots of offices built with open spaces. We then went into social housing for the elderly, and we built this project in Amsterdam, where you see these apartments hanging. Often we were asked, are the people that live inside not scared? No, they're not so scared. They're all 90 years old, and there's not so much that scares you at that age. In Madrid, we built this social housing project. Again, density with a big public space. And you see, we try these things more often in all kinds of places. But sometimes we also built single family houses. This is a holiday home for Alain de Botton, a British philosopher who wanted to convince the British population that modern architecture is a good thing. And therefore he needed a spectacular holiday home that you can go there with 8 people, rent it out for a weekend or midweek, and because the design is so quirky, you will talk about architecture, and that's the goal of this house. So yeah, we try to densify and we try to make it nice. We also have a research institute. We used to do all the research in our office, but that became a bit expensive. So then the Delft University of Technology allowed us to have an institute within the university. We said we want to be seen and we want to make a difference there. And so they gave us a courtyard, and in this courtyard we were allowed to build this orange tribune, the Y Factory Tribune. And in this picture you see students watching television. They do that at night. But what they also do, they have to actually present their work. So I don't know how you do exams here in your university, but in my university it was just me and 2 professors, and I had to present my work. In the Y Factory, you have to present your work in this space on a large screen, much bigger than this one, and everybody can just, if they like what they see, they can just join. So you're 2 professors and half the university is potentially looking at you. So you hopefully increase your presentation skills. And we use that for official things. Here's the minister talking to the university. And we make lots of books. We have more than 1 meter books published recently. For us, it's really important that architecture is not an art as such, but that it is an applied art. We only do architecture because it needs to be used. It would be terrible if one of our buildings would be empty and not used. So we do basically architecture for students, to inspire students. You see here Sylvia from Italy having a trip to Amsterdam, and she kisses our building. Now this is a big compliment for us. And here you see Nicole and her little dog Hammer, who live in Markthal in one of our buildings. We visit her quite often. She's extremely proud of the building and her lifestyle in there. And for us, this is a real reward that architecture is working. The people are happy who sit in there. So this is what we should do. And also on an urban level, the architecture should function. People should be proud about the building, or at least like it in some way. And also in terms of global impact, our architecture should be good. It shouldn't harm the earth. Where we come from is the warning of the Club of Rome that we are running out of resources. And still, until today, architecture is eating a lot of our natural resources. I think architecture makes up for 1/3 of the global pollution, and it's up to us and to you to actually change this and to not let this happen anymore. We need to take responsibility for these things as architects. We all need to do that. Even if you don't have a budget, still think about how can this building be a good citizen. And this is, if we would all behave like Americans, then we would need the Earth 4.4 times. How can we improve that we get back to one Earth? Now, many people then we have to reduce ourselves. We have to drive the car less. We have to do this less, eat less pork and stuff like that. We think this is not human nature to tell people to do less out of responsibility. First of all, we're all terribly irresponsible. But, well, instead of driving a car that is bad, we can then try to drive a car which is good. So our firm belief is that, and that is also something that we grew up with, in the 1970s, the 1980s, there was always some newspaper that told you that in 5 years' time the car would fly, or that you have a kitchen that would just prepare you. So the technology promised to solve everything for us. And we still believe in that promise in a way. Of course, it's not just technology that is coming. No, we have to do that ourselves. So here, our idea is that we have to consume not less, but better. Well, to the context, what I came for. We are in a European office, and if you look at Europe from at night, you see all these little dots. There are hardly any big dots. You can also see the place where we come from. Just run there. See, here is the Paris, London, the only metropolises, and then you have this enormous area of urban fabric, which is the Flemish region, the Dutch region, and the Ruhr region in Germany. But it's not one big city, it's many small cities. And that's the quality of Europe. We have 450 towns with 100,000 inhabitants. And they all have their own history. They all have a beautiful old town. And many of them are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Even though you have some really beautiful UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Colombia, it's basically a European game for now. And we have most of them. And you see that then in these cities. This is a mayor's wet dream to have a castle and an old university and a place that hasn't changed in 400 years. European cities are for pedestrians. They have metros and tram lines. We use the bicycle all the time. But hey, we also made lots and lots of mistakes. This is also Europe. This is the place that we need to work on to improve. And this is Europe. Here you see the periphery of a city in Europe with cheap shops and bad housing. Then you see, this is a map of Amsterdam where in blue you have the expensive areas of town, which is mostly the historical part. And in red you see the cheap parts of town where real estate prices are pretty low and where the life is not so good. So for us, it's really important to do something about this. The problem what this kind of logic does is that the population increasingly starts to hate modern architecture because it's almost, you can almost show in this map that the modern architecture are the red areas in the town and the old architecture are the blue areas in town. I realized that in Colombia it's a bit different. I've been in Bogota to beautiful new apartments that are inhabited by people that live behind these gates. But in Europe we increasingly want to go back into the historical substance. We're not the only ones. In America you have these kind of inner cities and you have these kind of suburbs. This is a typical American situation. Quite terrible. They end often in cul-de-sacs with some houses. But in order to have nice areas for themselves, the Americans have started to copy Europe. So here you see, I think this is San Francisco, which looks like Italy. And here you have Los Angeles, that also looks like Italy. And then when you go to China, you have this kind of cityscape, and also there they're trying to make it nicer. And if I take you to Turkey, you see a Dutch city. This is Antalya. And here we have a Dutch town outside Shanghai. And here we have a British town somewhere in China as well. So basically this is what we do and this is what we like. This traditional architecture somehow is very loved and we sell it as souvenirs. Now, the Netherlands are really famous for hyper-modernist contextual architecture. In 2000, this book was presented called Super Dutch, and one of our buildings was on the cover. And it said that there is a new breed of modernism coming from the Netherlands, which is relentless, direct, conceptual, and absolutely fantastic. All the architects in the book hated the book because they didn't want to be put into some kind of family, because they all thought we're individuals, we're not part of a movement. And so the writer Bart Loodsma is now in exile somewhere else, in Luxembourg. He was never allowed back into the country. And in 2013, there was a new book, which was perhaps a bit more honest about the Dutch situation, which was called Double Dutch. And it's the modern architecture after 1985, so basically after Super Dutch. And what he found was quite interesting, namely that 60% of the new construction in the Netherlands is now postmodernism or historical. So we have become from hypermodernist, we basically went to nostalgic. And inside this book, our Villa Fepero is, you see, and it's underneath the article, Fuck the Context, which my partner Vinny, he got the book in his hands and he started to add the context. Apparently the writer didn't understand it, so he showed in the book how it actually was. Yes, our building is highly contextual. This is the Google view of the building. You see it there in the corner with the green roof. But how are you contextual in the vicinity of a tennis court and parking lots and other office buildings? It's quite difficult. But anyway, we thought we made this. But yes, our context might be a bit different from this kind of context, where this is the city center of The Hague, which is totally built up with postmodernist architecture now. And Dutch people now love this kind of stuff. This is a new canal development in the south of the country. The most popular house in our country is now a 1930s villa, and if you Google 1930s villa in Dutch, then you get this kind of thing, and you see that all these, or basically most of them, are new. There are only a few 1930 villas in this image. Most of them are new constructions. And it's bizarre because the quality of a 1930s house would be this. You have a beautiful ornamented ceiling, you have beautiful doors, but the reality in the 1930s housing, the copies, is that they look like this. Low ceilings, no ornaments, and very little quality. Why do we want to be in this nostalgic architecture? Well, there are many theories why we want to do that, and one of them is that life is changing, globalization is hitting us, we become more conservative, we have now conservative parties in Europe, and maybe we also need conservative architecture in times of in times of globalization. We also have lots of immigrants in Europe, and the funny thing is that the immigrants share this taste for nostalgic architecture. Here you see a new big mosque that was built in Rotterdam in an Alibaba kind of style, and there's a housing project in Moroccan style, which is actually extremely successful, and it was not only good with Moroccans, but also with the Dutch people. So for the first time, they actually really mixed in one housing project. So all you need to do is you build a bad copy of the Alhambra, and Dutch and Moroccans start to mix. We like all these things, actually. You see here one of our projects in China, in Tianjin. It's a mix of high-rise and low-rise. We tried to make a modern version of the hutong. Perhaps it looks very Dutch. And the Chinese people who lived in there are actually quite happy to live there, but they also think it lacks something. It lacks a bit of China. So what they started to do is actually to custom fit it a bit, so it's customized, and so suddenly this thing turned up. And we love it. Is that not fantastic? So they have an old, they have this traditional idea of a hutong. We translated it into a new hutong, and then they added a proper hutong door, which says that this family that lives behind this door is really important and rich. Now this is quite good. I want to show you now some projects how we deal with this wish for tradition and context. Zaandam is the place where the Dutch started to build ships, and this is how we dominated the world seas for 100 years, from 1650 to 1750 until the British kicked us out. And it's the place where Peter the Great, the Tsar of Russia, learned how to build ships. And you have these quaint little wooden houses, but the inner city and the station, they never had anything like that. It was just modern 1960s architecture. So you had loads of Japanese tourists arriving in Zaandam, looking where is the World Heritage Site. So Zaandam started to think about how can we meet the expectations of the people and show more who we are. They got in Kurt Souters, which is a postmodernist architect with a lot of humor, actually, and he built them a nice city hall in Zaandam style. And then they also needed a hotel right next door, which is this thing, stacked fishing houses. And it made headlines all over the world. And then they were really happy and started to build a really funky city center. And then they invited us to participate in a competition for a cultural center in Zaandam. And we thought, oh my God, what do we do? What can we add? So we have this traditional house, we have the city hall, and we have the hotel. So what can we add to this thing? To make it even more complex, they wanted to get these 8 cultural centers out of their houses and into this new culture cluster. None of them wanted to go, so we were designing a building for people that didn't want to use it. Also kind of tough. So we thought we should put them all together under one roof, but they should all keep their own identity. How do you do that? And then on top of that, if we wanted to win this competition, we actually had to deal with this Zaandam house. So we thought, what if we now use this house and we invert it? Then we have a house, an huiskamer, which is the Dutch word for living room. So a house room. And then we use that as a central atrium and we put all the other program around it. So this is our scheme, and with this scheme we then work competition. And in a way we also make a difference. We are still a modernist, we still have a modernist block in the middle of all this kitsch, and we still incorporate the kitsch. So this is the block. These are the voids for all the cultural centers. We then just shove them in. And then what it does is actually that we have the individual expression for each of the culture centers, and also a common ground. All these, in the gray zone, you have all the communal spaces that they can share, and that should take care of some incentive to work together. This is how it looks from above, and then we thought about the materialization. In the old houses, you have wood on the outside, and inside you have wallpaper. And we thought, okay, let's just turn it around. Now the wood is on the inside, and the wallpaper with paintings and decorations, and a cuckoo clock is on the outside. So we basically just take one of these Sandam houses and we invert it in a bold move, and this is how it looks then from the inside. You have the inverted house. And around it, because of this logic and because of these spaces that we directed towards sites in the surrounding, we have a really complex building. And it was kind of difficult to solve it all, but of course, yeah, we managed, and we work in BIM these days, which makes a project like that extremely manageable. And it's now underway, and the city is actually really happy with it, and it's going to be realized. I want to move to Oslo, and again, Europe, and what can you see that the skyscraper is as such American invention that became an Asian typology, and the only thing it actually does, it has an entrance. You go in there, and then you go up and down. And that's more or less what you can do. Of course, there's some exceptions to this rule, but this is basically what it does. So it's, in our view, it doesn't do anything to the city. So it's a bad citizen, the skyscraper. Yes, in terms of density, he might add something, but in terms of urban life, very little. What can we do to the skyscraper to make it more European, to give him all the qualities that we like so much about the small scale, the history, and the quirkiness of it? Imagine we would just, now we built one in Lego, and if we would just change one stone, wow, now we have an entire different building. We now have a building with halfway through an address. We have an outside platform where you can see the rest of the city, and we have a room underneath that has a view on 3 sides. So suddenly maybe the boss doesn't want to sit on top anymore, but he wants to sit halfway through in this great office that is floating above the city. What would that do? And maybe the hierarchy in the company becomes nicer, because now more people could use the top floor. Now we would change much more of these parameters and make it more open, more light, more outside spaces, and we do that then in these crazy things, and in the end we come up with a design. And the design then looks, for example, like this. Now this is what we call a European skyscraper. Huh? It has the same quality to us like an Italian mountain village, because you can see your neighbors, you have outside spaces, you can grow trees. Maybe there's an apple tree, and you can harvest your own fruit. We needed a lot of Lego to make them, and so Lego was friendly to send us 1 million white stones. And so we built a few of these towers, and then we wanted to build more towers and make them taller, but the University of Delft said no, because out of health and safety reasons, they were scared that one of the towers would collapse and kill a student, which is basically really bad PR. So we asked Lego for some more. They sent us 1 million extra stones. So now in total we are a proud owner of 2 million Lego stones, and then we could work on more varieties for the European skyscraper. The students made so many of them, and you see them, and then they built them in Lego. And in long workshops, they discussed all of them. So now, if you want to build a European skyscraper in Bogota, why don't you just give me a call and we'll send you one of these Lego models and you're done. You're going to have a nice skyscraper, I promise you. It's a good one. And look at the choice you have. And sometimes we then have to actually, big mouth, and we have to also realize these things. And when the largest bank of Norway wanted a new headquarters in Oslo, they asked us to do it. And for them, it was operation. They wanted to put 17 different offices together. Many different logos, many different brands, marketing people from the bank, bankers from the bank, from all these different brands. They had to suddenly work together. Human resources people from 17 offices had to come together into one. Now, and they said, well, that will be efficient, but the problem will be that all these people don't know each other, and how are we going to build a new organization for all these people, an organization that they all can share. So we started with a slab. We made some room for sites, because on one side is a fjord, on the other side the mountains. We put a passageway right through, an arcade towards the entrance. There's a lot of rain in Oslo. We slope it to the south for great views. And then we add spaces, because Norwegian people think it's really important to go outside once an hour. And then we spread the special program of the headquarter all over the volume, so that you suddenly have different addresses in different places. And then there's an interior route. You can the ground level up to the 17th floor on one side, and on the other side you can walk down again. And then in order to make it visible, we used glass to show this, and this is how you then can actually walk up and down through a bank. Now tell me one bank in the world where you can actually walk all the way up and all the way down through all the different departments. Now this is pretty new. We had to find a way to make this somehow affordable, so we based the entire building on a pixel of 6 by 6 meters, which is the ideal working group of the bank, 4 people. The bank wanted really boring interiors, standard offices. Nobody had his own desk, so it's a flex desk policy. If you leave your desk only for half an hour, you have to take everything with you. You get a little locker, and you're not allowed to use paper. So they wanted an absolutely neutral working environment, highly sterile. Wouldn't have been our choice, but they asked for it. But the moment that you want to take a coffee in this bank, you need to leave this neutral environment, and you have to go out of this department. You need your swipe card, and then you end up in this public walkway. And there you have a kitchen. So 17 kitchens on one side, 17 kitchens on the other side was the idea. In the end, it became a bit less, but this is basically how the bank works. And when you then take a glass of water, you see suddenly colleagues from other departments walk up and down. And it actually happens a lot. And here you see how this works. So you have all these stairs going up to the main lobby, and then you go down and you see how your colleagues work. And this is how basically the spine of the bank functions. And here you have the interior walkway. The funny thing is that Norwegians actually like fitness a lot, and they walk in the mountains. And so right after lunch, when they all went in the basement to have lunch, and on the top there is also a restaurant to have lunch, they usually go to lunch with the elevator, and then they walk up and down, so it becomes extremely busy in these stairs. Yeah, and then we're trying to do another European-style skyscraper in Jakarta. This is a building which is a retail center, entertainment center, offices, housing, and a Marriott hotel on top. And what you see is all these lush terraces where we wanted to plant a jungle so that people have a lot of outside spaces and lots of addresses to go to. Right. I take you to SPIJKENISSE, which is a suburb of Rotterdam. You see here the port of Rotterdam, and underneath SPIJKENISSE. It's a new town. It's basically built in the 1960s. In 1930, it was still a fishing village grouped around an old church. And then in the 1960s, they demolished the old village because they thought it was a slum. Maybe that could be interesting for you too, because you have really beautiful here around the mountains. Maybe you should preserve them, because the Dutch people thought that this was a slum. I can see that there's a certain beauty in those mountain sites. Then in the 1970s, they built social democratic housing. In the 1980s, they built cute housing. And in the 1990s, it became rational again. And in the meantime, Spijkenisse kept growing and became one of the 40 largest towns in the Netherlands. And they compare themselves in an annual competition. And Spijkenisse had the worst statistics in terms of culture, intelligence, and reading. So 8% of the population of Spijkenisse are not able to read, which for the Netherlands is like a catastrophe. It's just unbelievably stupid. And this in a town that was governed for 40 years by the Social Democratic Party, who has as an ideal to actually enlighten the working class, and they didn't do it. So lots of them can't read. So the people there took the action in their own hands. They founded their own political party, which is also a social democratic party, but totally centered on their own town. And they listened to the people, what they wanted, and they found out that a medieval city center is what the population of Spijkenisse wanted. Too bad they just basically demolished it, but they said, why not? We just rebuild a new one. And so that's what they did. They got the same architect as Sandam and built this thing. And because they are funny people, they also decided that Spijkenisse should have really important tourist attractions that are unique in the entire world. And so they just built all the bridges that you can find on the euro notes. These bridges are ideal bridges, don't really exist. You can't take a German bridge on money that the French use. So, but now they're all located in Spijkenisse. Then they built 3 squares, a market square, an entertainment square with this flashy new theater by UN Studio. And the last square was the square of intelligence and philosophy. And that was supposed to be our project. Oh yeah, I forgot about this one. This is the most famous inhabitant of Spijkenisse. It's DJ Afrojack. And for a while he was dating Paris Hilton, and they actually visited the place. Now, how do you build a library for Spijkenisse? And we were invited to a competition, and first we thought more traditional about what should a library be like. Should it be a really important public building? Yes. Should it look like a machine for reading? Perhaps. Or should it look like an office building like the new library in Amsterdam? Should we make it look like a shopping center like the library in Almere? The interior hardly ever has books. Should we go for the Mussolini style of the new library in Stuttgart? Or should we make it the living room of the city, like the new library in Seattle by Rem Koolhaas? Well, we couldn't really decide. We didn't have an idea. And so we started to think about what is Spijkenisse all about. It's about people who watch television and don't read. So how do we surprise them to read the book? What we really needed, we thought, was an advertisement for the book. So this guy watches television, but from time to time he has to walk out there with his dog. So he walks with his dog, and suddenly he wonders, hey, what's that? A mountain of books. And yeah, we like to climb mountains, so he climbs the mountain, and in the meantime he's manipulated. And so ideally this is how the story ends. The television is broken, and they're hooked to reading. Even the dog reads now. The problem with this is that the city of Spijkenisse thought that public buildings were basically a nuisance. They cost money. So with the public building, to make money. So this is the public building that costs money, and it results in more intelligence. And this is a commercial building that brings money. And what they usually do in Spijkenisse is that they combine the two. So here you see the Center for the Arts of Spijkenisse, which is also an Apple shop. The entrance to the art section looks like this. It's really inspiring, no? You really want to go in there. So basically, this is how the building looks like. It doesn't do a lot for the intelligence, because if you ask people in SPIJKENISSE, where is your Center for the Arts, they have to think about it. If you ask them, where's the Apple shop? Oh yeah, it's there. So they all know. So we had to deal with this. And on top of that, we had a lot of other programs. So we had a supermarket, we had offices to rent out, we had offices for the library, and we had a film house, and a chess club, and a bridge club. All this put into this building. And then we thought, okay, let's just put all the dirt together, put it into a pyramid of trash, and then we have a nice basis for the library. And we just put that on top. And the diagram then reads like this. You have a big public building, which is a bit like Potemkin, like a coconut. On the outside, you have the library. On the inside, you have all the stuff that the city also wanted. And this is how we conceived the book mountain. And here you see the pyramid at work. And of course, it needed to be visible, so we put it into this hood. Here you see it from the outside. We also needed to solve this wish for traditionalism. We had to connect old and new. Here you see the site. It's next to the old church and next to the last historical street of SPIJKENISSE. Here we had to build. So how do you connect all this together? And then SPIJKENISSE also told us that they wanted brick, and we said, okay, if you want brick, you can have brick. So we used a towel made of brick, or a sheet of brick, and we just put it all over the master plan and the church. So now we cover everything in brick. I think Salmone would have loved this building. You see, and we actually did it. So you see here the buildings that we designed in the back, they are absolutely covered in brick. It's 42 social flats, and you see even the roof is made of brick. And the brick goes from the inside to the outside, and we use it on the walls. And maybe Salmone would not have approved of that, but in order to make it acoustically viable, we had to use metal panels for acoustics, and then we just we glued brick strips onto them. And one of our architects went totally crazy with this concept, and he even covered the doors, and he covered the ceilings, and he drew every single brick in a totally obsessive way. And he's a nice guy. We sometimes visit him in the mental institution that he lives now. So here you see the brick thing. And so also in terms of communication, it was really important that the town is brick, and then on top of this brick, boom, you have the library. And this is the mountain. And then, so this is the design that we had, and we have to protect it from Dutch weather. And at that time, this exhibition in Switzerland was hot. And Vinny, my colleague, he said, yeah, well, maybe we can have a cloud above it, a cloud of gas, and that would protect the books. And then the city councillor got really upset and said, go away and come up with something better. And then we came up with this thing to make it look like one of these things you can shake with snow. But it wasn't allowed. The city remembered that they had a maximum volume, and they said, yeah, it can't be bigger than the church, and you have to make it with a traditional roof. So basically this is how it looked like, and then we kind of had peace with that because it looks like a big farm, which then refers to the agricultural past of the place. And we also could solve the hood, the glass hood, in a very economic way, because we could just use local wood in an old construction method, and this is then used to support the glass structure. So this is all carrying the load, and it works very well. Of course, a glass building for library. I mean, this library in it hardly has glass. And why is that? Because you want to protect your books from the UV light, and that they don't deteriorate, and that doesn't get hot. So in terms of sustainability, we had a problem, and maybe in terms of books that would age, we had a problem. Now the books, there was no problem at all, because the books, they are given to the people, and they are brought home. People read them at home, they destroy them. And the typical book in SPIJKENISSE only has a lifespan of 4 years before it's trashed. So that is faster than the sun. And so that was no problem, but sustainability actually was a problem. And then we thought, how do we solve it? And the idea was then to just use the bad conditions of the glass, that it leaks and that it creates heat and cold, and we just harvest that. So we have these pipes right near the glass. You see them there. They're the sprinkler installation, but they are also the heating and the cooling. So in summer we pump cold water through it, which is then heated up by the sun. And this warm water we then store in the ground. And in winter we use it to heat the building. And so by using this and many, many other passive technologies, including the plant you see, it's a Brazilian fig tree that helps to air condition the building. We were actually able to make it highly energy efficient. It only consumes a little bit of electricity, and yeah, so it's really good for public building. It has an amazing energetic value. Then there's the psychology of the mountain. Of course, we want people to climb the mountain. You have mountains here. I'm sure you climb them, but in the Netherlands, we don't have them. And so we thought this might work, this trick. People build weird buildings just to go on top. If you don't have mountains, you have to make these crazy things to get people up. So we thought in SPIJKENISSE this might work, and it actually does. So in order to get people fit, we made these wide stairs, a bit like here in the library, same trick. You have a nice big inviting stair and the elevator is a bit hidden, hoping that you would then use the stair. And on your way up to the top, you are continuously surrounded by books on both sides. And even though the library is much smaller than the library they had before, it has a lot of ceiling height. And so it never feels claustrophobic. And then on top there's a cafe and you can relax from all the mountain climbing. It now works very well. Here you see a wedding. SPIJKENISSE now made it an official wedding place. And what you see here is a gay wedding. It's two ladies. You see them there below. That had a marriage, and all their kids were also there. I go to SCHIJNDEL now, which is a small town in the south of the Netherlands. It's Winnie Maas grew up there, and it's his hometown. And also they love this stuff. See, all these new things they built over the last years. It's all nostalgic. Some are good, some are worse, and there's even an English cottage. This is SCHIJNDEL how it used to be. Then the Second World War kicked in, destroyed the city center. They built a big parking lot. I didn't really know what to do with it. So I had this big space in the city, in the town center. Winnie Maas, when he was 18, he wrote a letter to the mayor, and the mayor was even able to see what it meant, which is nice. They sent him a nice little answer saying it's not for now, but it's for later. It took them 30 years to call us back, and then basically they did, and they said, what should we do here? Should we just reconstruct the old town like they did in places like Warsaw? And then Winnie said, what do you want? Well, we want to be famous, we want to make a mark, we want to have an identity. They said, well, why don't you just build a skyscraper, 300 meters, and the entire country will know you. No, this is a joke, huh? You can't be serious. So we designed them 7 different buildings, and they all refused them. There was always one political party that said no, and the city councillor had to go. And in the end, they decided to put all the parties together on one table. And in 8 weeks of work, they finally decided that this could come. This is the maximum volume. Great. Problem was for us that it looks like a local farm. So it was a Freudian move. Huh? So what they lost, they want to have back. We see all the farms, and we said, okay, why not we just give them a farm? So we started to analyze the farms in SketchUp. We put all the farms that are left, 80 of them, into SketchUp, and we started to analyze them. And then we made an average calculation. And then in the end, we ended up with what is the average SCHIJNDEL farm. And then we put it on the side, and then we had a problem. It was too small. But hey, thanks to BIM and Photoshop, we can just make it bigger. And then they said, okay, how do you materialize it? Because we want traditional materials. We want brick, wood, thatch. No, we didn't want that. Because it looks like a farm, but it is not a farm, it's just a shopping center. So what about glass? Glass, yeah, a farm has glass, great. So we found a way to print farms on glass in a new method. And so basically the glass building, inside it's really shit, there was no money for architecture, but we have a 2 millimeter architecture, basically, which is this glass. And the print was done, and then from time to time there were real windows, so we had to erase the print. So we start with the brick, then with the windows. We also engaged an artist, so he added some stuff like the shadow of a tree that isn't there. And then we have the transparencies, and this is how it then looks like. And it became a tourist attraction, and the people of Schijndel were really proud of it, and which is good because the parents really still live there, and they were attacked during the construction continuously that this monstrosity was built in the town center. But then later on, they were walking with this rollato, the Zimmer frame, very proudly, and said it's great. Yeah, everybody loves it, and this is how it then basically looks. The farm is made out of 1,008 panels. They're all number. You see it here. So if one of them breaks, it can just be sent back to the factory for a new print. From the inside, you see the farm, which is really strange view. You see it here in the kitchen, and if the guy washes his hands, he sees the farm. And then you have these windows. You see the ugliness of Schijndel outside, which then fades into this beautiful brick motif. From inside the shops, you have these strange moments, and even the shop windows, they look like this. This is the ice salon, and here you have the yoga parlor. So, however bad they furnish it, it doesn't really hurt the building because the glass is so strong in that sense. Yeah, and then they were pretty happy, especially when the BBC and visited this small village in Schijndel, and there was never a TV crew, not even a Dutch TV crew in there, so for them it was extreme. And we did that not with a museum or with a big public building or with millions of budget, we just did it with a small series of shops. I'll take you now to Rotterdam. Rotterdam is an industrial city which has an art collection worth 7 billion euro. One of them is this painting. But as it goes with museums, 95% of this art collection is stored away in basements. One of the basements contains floods. This is the museum director in the flooded basement. Whenever it rains, they start to pump. And that was a problem. So the museum director started to get funding for a depot for the art. And normally you would build a depot on the outskirts of town and build a big fence around it. But now this is the art collection of the people of Rotterdam, and the people of Rotterdam need to be able to see it from the inside. Okay, so we are here in the city center, actually in a park which is designed by Yves Brunier together with Rem Koolhaas. If I say park, you might think of green, but this looks like it's actually white pebble and the entrance of a parking garage. But there was the competition site. Again, we had to compete. All around, you had a big hospital and lots of cultural institutions. A very central spot in Rotterdam. Here's our site. We had to preserve a walking route for pedestrians. Our first idea was to make a museum that is really safe for water. We have a table with a sculpture garden on top. So everybody sees that the 7 billion euro worth art collection is secure. Even if there is a flood, nothing can happen. But we found out that the budget of the museum was just good enough to pay for the steel, but not have it delivered. So that was a problem. Then we tried with the most boring shape ever, the block, and even that was too expensive. It had too much facade, so we couldn't use the block. And then we were in crisis because how can we solve this? The budget was basically too low for this building. And then one of us found this solution to make it round, because then suddenly you have less facade. And then we make it even smaller on the bottom so that less of the park is destroyed. And on top, we would add a terrace so that people can overlook the surroundings. This round volume made it possible that you preserve the view lines. But still, you're building a monstrous, a whopper of a building in a park. So how can we dematerialize it? And then we thought, oh, let's make it a big mirror object like that beam in Chicago. So then suddenly the building will reflect the park, and you can even look around the corner if you see it. And towards the top, the building will just disappear. And at night, the few windows that you have that are hidden within the glass come out. So this is how it looks then. During day, you see the city, and in the evening or with bad weather, then you see how the windows materialize. So this is how we imagined it, and yeah, all the trees that had to be. We thought, well, why don't we just dig them out and put them on the roof? In the end, that was possible. We got $1 million extra funding, and we basically made this happen. So this is how you're going to approach the building. The entrance is there, hidden. You see the trees on the roof. This is how it sits. The ground floor is half for the lobby and half for distribution. They need to put really big trucks inside because of safety. And then you can take the elevator and go into the archive. And there's a big atrium that goes all through the building, and it is covered with artifacts. You see it goes all the way up, and this is how it's going to look like. And people will be able, because museums in the Netherlands are really expensive, they cost €10, and not everybody can afford it. If you have a family, €40, it's the price of a meal. So we thought, how can we make it accessible even for people who can't pay the entrance? Well, why don't we just take an elevator, which is free, all the way up to the roof, which is free, through this space. So you can at least see the space while you go up there. And then we thought for the evenings that we would make a lighting plan that would highlight some of the better artworks there. And you can freely move around there in cages. You can touch the stuff that's not so expensive, and the more expensive stuff you can then see in these guided tours that you can book as part of the visit. You can see how they are preparing the art for launch, have temporary exhibitions, restoration workshops, weird art projects as they come. And then on the roof you have this restaurant that everybody can visit with a mirrored ceiling so that you can see the art, and there will be a garden. I'm almost at the end. Crystal Houses is a building. I missed the opening because I'm in Bogota. It was opened on Tuesday. It's in this street in Amsterdam, which used to be a residential road. It's called the PC Hoofdstraat. And in the 1960s, it slowly started to turn into a shopping street. And now it is the one and only chic upmarket shopping street in the Netherlands, the one place where you have Gucci, Prada, Chanel stores. You know, the Netherlands are by definition a sober Protestant country, so we don't really need these shops. But since Amsterdam built 4 new museums, we have so many tourists that they all occupy these shops. Suddenly they need them. Before that, the street was really bad taste and only footballers would shop there. But since the museums have come, entire masses come there. Now the city of Amsterdam had a problem because these residential buildings, they are not flagship stores. They don't provide enough space. So how do you keep Chanel, Prada and all these other brands happy? Because this is what they want. They want these shiny palaces like the Gucci house here. But they can't realize them without destroying the historical substance of the city. And you see here that it was about these 2 white buildings, formerly residential, and now with a really ugly facade for the shop underneath. So first we went into the archive to look, how did they look before? It was actually 3 brothers. They all look the same, built in 1874. And then they were changed into shops. Our client asked another architect initially to redesign them, and he came up with this thing. And our client would have made a lot of money and saved a lot of money, but he wasn't happy with it. And then he came to us and said, look, this is not really doing it for me, and I feel like committing a crime against the city if I would build this. The city already said yes to this, but we can't do it. And we said, why don't we just use these old buildings and we stretch them? We use the old facade and we make it bigger, so you get this weird upscaled thing. And then he said, yeah, okay, but we don't have big windows here. He said, yeah, but what about that? Huh? You have the empty side with a nice view to the park behind, and then you just fill it with glass. That's all you do. Oh, how do you do that? Oh, you use glass bricks. We had no idea whether that was possible. Sometimes you bluff to your client, you tell him it's no problem. Okay. And this is how it would look like. So you would have these beautiful glass buildings and every detail would be made out of glass. Isn't that great? And to our great shock, the client loved it. And he said, let's do it. Okay, so we went with the plan to the city of Amsterdam, and the city of Amsterdam said, no, can't do it. This is really not the tradition here. You need housing behind brick, and we have a rule that you have to use brick. We have a rule for roof tiles and all these things. This would destroy the historic substance. So what we did is we looked at the buildings that they already had agreed to build. So here we counted a percentage of 36% brick. Here we counted a percentage of 16% brick, and then we calculated out that most of the buildings, the average amount of brick in the facades in the surrounding was 20%. So we said, okay, let's do it. We remove these buildings, we replace them with the bigger version in glass, and we make them brick, and then we reduce the brick to only 20%. Now, so this is how we did it. Glass, brick, 20%. Yeah, and this is how we managed to get a building permit. And this was the design. And now all we had to do is realize it. And the client started to build the new buildings all around it. And at a certain moment, they were done, except for this 9 meter of glass facade. In the meantime, we tried to make it happen, and we tried plexiglass and all kinds of other things. We also for a moment thought just printing it like in the glass farm, but nothing really worked. So thank God we went to Venice, to Murano, to see this glass factory where they could make glass bricks really precisely with hardly any mistakes, so only less than 1 millimeter of tolerance for the material. But then we had to find a way to stick them together, because glass doesn't stick with cement, and we wanted to have a glass facade and not a glass facade which has these ugly cement lines. So what did we find out? That orthodontal glue was the best, actually. It's a glue that's extremely resistant. They use it in your mouth a lot, so it can stand pressure. And first you apply it, then you glue it, and then you use UV light. So if there's sun on the glass facade, this facade gets better. And then, yeah, we made this table out of it. We put it into pressure tests. We calculated out the pressure on the facade. And then we saw that we needed some extra support beams, which we made. And then we ordered everything in Italy, and this is how it arrived in the Netherlands. Everything beautiful. Here, for example, we have an arch, and this arch is resistant enough to support 2 full-blown SUVs. You can drive them over this and nothing will happen. You see how beautiful it is. Now then we had to build it, and it was the cleanest construction site in the city, because it had to be absolutely dust-free, because we couldn't have dust in the glue. And I want to show you this video, how this actually worked. Yeah, in the office we call it the glass porn. I think it took half an hour for each brick. So for a few months they had to actually build this. Put the glue into a mold. Now then they put the UV light on it. So you have slow food, but this was really slow architecture. It's the slowest construction site ever. And extremely clean, and you see the numbers on the bricks, they were all numbered, so it was like a big mosaic as well on top of that. But also really good, because bricks that were that broke, they could just be replaced, and you could use the material again. So one day, if this building is demolished, hopefully not so fast, they can just basically recycle the facade. Right, this will continue for a while, so I spare this to you. The most difficult detail was actually this, where we have where it fades out into the real brick, because then we had to use some kind of cement, and so we hit the bricks with glass so they can stick together. Last Monday, it was finally taken out of the plastic, and people could look at it. On Tuesday, Chanel opened its doors. It was not designed for Chanel. They are very particular about it, because they will only occupy it for 1.5 years, and then they will move into one of their corporate identity shops, and some new brand will move in here. And this is how it looks in daylight. You see all the beautiful details. The glass was extremely expensive, because normally glass is green, and we for a glass that had as little green as possible. And still you see that because it's so massive and such a big amount of glass, that it has a slight touch of green in there. But this is not all. So the next step is the glass city. Here you see a design for it. This is a city where you can see through all the buildings. I mean, imagine this for Bogota. All these big rich people's apartments in front of the mountain, and you can just see right through it, and they don't block the view to the mountain. Yes, the toilets are hidden behind the mirror and your clothing as well, so it reflects it. But wouldn't that be great? Look, here you see a living room in glass, and then of course also on the ground floor you should have cars made out of glass and tramways out of glass. So yes, I want to take you to your own city. I had a nice tour here, and I saw that you have nicely gentrified areas of town that look extremely European and clean. But then you also in the same area you have these things. And I walked there and I was wondering what to do with them. Are you going to rebuild the old colonial architecture? Are you going to give this to a project developer to build yuppie flats? What are you going to do? Or is it going to be left to its own devices? I want to show you a project we're doing in Beijing area that might be an inspiration to you. The Hutong, of course, is known like this, and a lot of it is being demolished and replaced by this kind of stuff. Recently, the Chinese have realized that it was a mistake to demolish all that, and they're starting to renovate the Hutong. The problem with the Hutong renovation is that it then ends up in this generic shopping environment where you have places like, you have brands like Sephora who occupy it, and then it becomes just another shopping environment that lacks authenticity. If you go inside, you often see that they're not even authentic anymore, but that they're made out of concrete. Is that what the Chinese really want? An entire inner city that is Disney-fied? It's a Disney version of what was never there. So we were commissioned to think about an alternative, and this is a really big project. I could talk 2 hours about it, and but I want to show you just one of the possibilities. In one of these Hutong areas, you have a site which has absolutely nothing left anymore of the historical substance, but it used to be there. And we all know that it used to be there because you're in the middle of the Hutong. So how to deal with this? Our proposal for this area is that we first rebuild, helped by the archives of the city, we rebuild what once used to be there in wood, with all the greatest detail that you can find. And this is how it then looks like. In the meantime, the street has gone bigger, so we have to cut it, which is pretty good for our little plan. And then we use these wood structures to cast concrete over them. Just pour it all over, plop. And then we put circulation in, we cover it with the floor and add a glass facade and put a roof in, openings, and this is the end result. And now suddenly you still have the historical buildings. They're somehow preserved, but they're modern. So you still have the old, you can see all the details in the interior, you can see them through the glass, and yet there is a modern architecture in there. And in a way, it's a monument for what was left. It monumentalizes what has disappeared, and it doesn't just bring it back in a nostalgic way, but perhaps in a more contemporary way. Okay, now I promise this is the last. This is the historical city center of Rotterdam, and it used to be a really beautiful city, and then somewhere in May 1940s, in 1940, Hitler tested his new army, and he wiped out the place. And this is basically what was left. You see here our site. After the war, it was rebuilt in a rather cheap way, and the city center moved to another area, and the old market area was not really used anymore. After they had dug down a drain, suddenly we had a big square in this place, and they said, okay, now this big square is hardly ever used. We now need an activator for this square. We need a building that attracts lots of people. Rotterdam city center also had the problem that only 20,000 people lived there for an agglomeration of 1 million. So the city has a very active program to get apartments back in. So they said in this one area, you need to have a public market which is covered so that people will come there every day, and you also need new apartments. So this is when they came up with the project developers competition, and we were called by this really traditional project developer from The Hague called Provast. In that time they were residing in a palace in The Hague, and now they moved to a modern building. And they asked us, because we were a young office from Rotterdam, they didn't know the city, and so we got the commission to enter this competition together. First, the thing we did is we went to Spain to learn from the best, and what we learned in Spain was fantastic. They had a food culture that we didn't know in the Netherlands. They knew how to celebrate food and how to stage it, and this is something we wanted to do. Wow, we wanted to have this this richness of food. What we didn't want is that the neighborhood would close down when the market shuts down. So the market needed to stay open all day. Because in Barcelona, they close the market at 12, I think, and then it stops. What we also didn't want were low ceilings and this claustrophobic feeling. So with the help of a little bit of wine and a paper napkin, they started to make the first design for this market hall of Rotterdam, a Venetian palazzo with apartments on top and a cathedral-like space underneath, which was open from all sides so that the Rotterdam public could just enter freely, because Dutch people are not used to a covered market. So slightly drunk, the project developer said, great, let's do this. He went to The Hague and discussed it with his financial department, and they said, no, because Rotterdam is a difficult city. It's the cheapest city of the Netherlands. You can buy apartments from 800 euros onwards per square meter. You can rent them from 8 euro onwards. And in Markthal, they needed to be much more expensive. And the market, the city insisted that it would be a real market. So the market stand, the rent, was not supposed to be more expensive than on the outside market. We could only have 45 euros a day rent. For this money, you cannot build a building. So that was a problem. Financial department came up with an alternative plan, said, why don't you do this? You have a housing slab for rent, one for sale, and in between you have a small, tiny market, as small as possible, because it was a negative point on the balance of this project. And we said, well, you know, we can make you a facade for this, but we're going to win the competition with this. And it took a while before together we came with the solution that we would just use this ideal, this efficient thing, and we turn it around, plop. And suddenly we have We have a huge space, 40 meters by 40 meters, 120 meters long, and on top of that, a layer of penthouse apartments that you can rent, that you can sell for a lot of money. They first said, yeah, that's good, we can do it, but the apartments don't have enough sun, so let's make maybe a Roman arch. Problematic, where shall I leave my elevator? Here. That's how we redesigned the shape a bit. Then they said, well, most money in this building will be earned on the ground floor, so you have to make the ground floor bigger. Can you not make this building look like an omega sign with more on the outside? We said, well, that's not so elegant. But what about this? The market doesn't bring so much money. Why don't we reduce the surface of the market a little bit? And so therefore we went inwards. And this is how market hall came to life. So here you see how it was constructed. It's also a very long story because we constructed in soil that was as stable as custard. But basically two flats that can stand alone and only one layer of penthouses on top that had to be the bridge. The shape is so totally rational. It's not a crazy architect's idea. This is basically shaped by financial conditions and logic. I want to walk through the building with you really fast. You see ground floor has the market and restaurants and retail, which is only related to food. We have 100 units inside the market. We designed them in a very neutral way so that the market people could come up with their own identity. Here you have a pinchos, a frozen yogurt, a cheese, and French fries. They all have their own identity. A market is not a stylish thing, but it's slightly vulgar, and you have to help to find their own identity. Then we decided to not have a competition inside the market, so you can buy everything cheap for a middle budget and expensive. So this is the price of chicken, ranging from €3 to €27. The market stalls had also roofs. Some were used for urban farming, others were made of glass. And there was terraces for the food court. It's good to separate the food court, otherwise the market is not authentic anymore. And here you have the restaurants, and the restaurants, they have all outside entrances so that you can also use the restaurants when the market hall is closed separately. And here you see the interior when they barbecue, so it's lovely. We initially won the competition with an art print on the outside, so strawberries over 3 floors. But then the owner of the shopping center asked us to be more sober so that people wouldn't approach the building and only photograph it from the outside, but that they actually had a reason to go inside. So then we wanted to make it more sober, and we just used the street pavement of Rotterdam, which is a beautiful gray granite. And so basically market hall is nothing but a fault in the street, in the urban fabric. And then you see how well it works. The colorful print is really coming out. And this is the print. You basically lie on your back in a meadow, you look upwards to the sky, and all the stuff that you can buy on the market is falling down onto you. The artist, that's him. It's a local artist. He had 3 weeks to realize it. He had it's a 3D animation. He went to an office depot to get a computer, and they told him that there was no computer that could calculate 11,000 square meters of render. So how to deal with this? So he Googled a little bit, and he ended up with a computer in Hollywood, the same farm that rendered Finding Nemo, this Hollywood animation of the orange fish. And this is how they made it. And then in the last week, before they had to print it on these aluminum panels, the owner of the shopping center came and said, "Oh, you have a lot of insects in there. You know, our consumers are scared of insects. You can't put aggressive insects in there." So they had to commission about what kind of insect could be in there. And they came up with a few. Butterflies were okay. Then they said, there's another problem. You have pork in there, and Rotterdam is a city with lots of Muslims. You know, the market is for everybody, so you don't have pork in that. Okay, the chopsticks got out. Next thing, the steaks. You know, we have lots and lots and lots of Hindus in the city, and cows are kind of holy to them. Could we please remove any dairy products and steaks? We did that as well. So now it's apparently nobody cares about killing fish. So we have lots of fish in there and a lot of vegetables. In order to be able to see the market, and this is another one of these things, we design something, we win a competition, and then we have to realize we have to actually build it. We had a window that was 40 by 40 meters. How do you do that? Thank God for my neighbor. He is an engineer for Royal Haskoning DHV, an engineering firm that works all over the world. And they came up with the solution that you would basically use steel ropes and you make it work like a tennis racket. So you have these steel ropes and each crossing a screw and they connect the glass. And in between the glass you have silicon, which means if there's a heavy storm, the entire glass can be pushed into the building 70 centimeters, which is quite a lot, which means that the steel cables all centimeters longer. So this is what they calculated out in a computer model, and he became with this design the engineer of the year. He bought himself a nice new BMW hybrid because he's good for the environment, and then he often, when it storms, he goes with his hybrid to Markthal and sees whether this thing actually moves, but they forgot to put the buildings that are around Markthal into the computer model, and therefore it will probably never happen. Now, it also needed to be a sustainable building, and how do you heat and cool such a big space? We decided to just not do it. So the fresh air is coming in underneath. You go into the market hall, it's out, it's either cold or hot. You see the natural ventilation takes care of it because the market is hot, the people are warm, the air goes up in a natural way, and only in summer they have a little bit of mechanical ventilation. Winter they have a floor heating to keep the frost out, but that's all. With this we were able to reach BREEAM very good, and what makes it the best performing shopping center in the entire country. And now other shopping centers are also starting to not heat the galleries. I go down to the basement with you. It's really important. We have the delivery platform there. Markthal doesn't have a front side and it doesn't have a back side. You have shop windows on all sides. And that's new and that's good. But normally a shopping center in a European city has a distribution hedge, 40 meters of steel doors, and that doesn't do anything to the urban surrounding. It actually is the place where drunken people start to pee against the facade. So this is something we didn't want, and therefore we invested a lot of money so that the delivery can come into the basement. We also solved another problem because we have apartments on the second floor, and if at 4 o'clock in the morning they start deliveries there, then the people don't sleep anymore. So in order to have the apartments and the market function well together, we had to do this distribution in the basement. What you also have down there is the food preparation and storage. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, they're yelling there, and the food arrives from Paris, and they're making food. On the other side, we have a suburban shopping center, small supermarket, a wine store, and we thought this was really important to have that because we thought Rotterdam people have no food culture, so basically we need a supermarket in order to attract enough people. The supermarket has a tunnel for the expedition, which comes out in the square because they are the only ones who come with bigger trucks. Then you have the entrance to the parking garage and the biggest parking garage in town. Again, here, together with the city, we decided to have a big parking garage underneath, which makes it possible for the city to remove parking from the street level. So the city will be nicer because there are less cars in the public space. At the same time, the people that are now forced to park in Markthal, they are also potential consumers. So for these people, we made this big crater in the center of the building that goes 4 stories down with escalators, and then you arrive inside and instantly you see this big art piece. You go up, and on your way up, you see the stations in the history of Rotterdam, and you see these shop windows filled with artifacts that we found in the big construction site. Now I'll take you to the apartments. You know the trick was that we basically use the apartments as wall. We have 228 apartments, and they are grouped around 6 cores. Per core, there are around 4 apartments. They all have a view and balcony towards the city, and half of the apartments also has windows to the market. Here you see the outside. This is to the inside. Yeah, our idea was that you would be able to open these windows, that you lower a bucket to the market, you say, hey, give me a fish, you pull it up again. The problem is that if you would lose the bucket and it would kill somebody, it's not your problem, but it's the problem of the shopping center, because you are then being killed on the grounds of the shopping center, and they would have to pay for it. So we couldn't make the windows operational. We actually had to use triple glass so that you can't hear the market, that you can't smell the market. But it still works very nice. So these people have a great view. They have also, yeah, is it a view or is it a painting that you have there? And they live in these apartments in really strange conditions. Huh? This couple has an inverted attic almost. They look down into the market hall. On top, then you have the richer people. They have to pay a bit more, the penthouses. They have to take 1 flight of stairs along the window. Here you have Nicole and her dog again. She lives in a very bright apartment. These penthouses are very deep, so we had to add light cords so that the bedrooms have a little bit of natural light. And in the light cord, you see that there is a glass window as well onto the market. Here you see another one. This young couple made the light cord into a garden with rabbits, and the rabbits, they walk over the glass all the time. They don't really understand what goes on. This is what happens. Here's 40 meters above the market. And then for PR reasons, we used the baby and some Lego. You remember we have a lot of Lego, and the baby also was not so scared. So, and this is a Markthal in full swing. You see, it started to animate the surroundings already, but it also did a lot to Rotterdam as such. Suddenly we were on television and people said, you have to go to Rotterdam because something's happening there. And Rotterdam used to be a problematic city and people wouldn't really want to go there. And suddenly they projected there would be 400,000 extra visitors. Oh my word. Then the Financial Times said that we had our own Bilbao. And we thought this is absurd because Bilbao built a really expensive museum and we just built a flat with a market inside. So the amount of money invested in both things was totally different. And also Markthal was a private building, not necessarily a public building as much. And we were even more surprised to find out that our queen would open Markthal. She normally doesn't open shopping centers and she doesn't open residences. But she came, she had a good time, and in the best Cinderella fashion of a princess, she opened the Markthal with a big pumpkin, then she walked through, and on both sides you see our very happy clients. We now have the honor to work again with them. They were kind of happy. She talked to all the people inside the market, but what was really touching and humbling was what happened outside. At the same moment, the population of Rotterdam had waited for this thing, and now finally they could go in, and then suddenly they entered. And there were so many of them that the door started to block, the escalator started to stop, the fire department panicked because there were too many people in the building, and this situation took a while. I mean, we overnight basically had to redesign some of the escalators and some of the doors and reprogram them and find a way to deal with these enormous crowds. This is one of the butchers. And here you see how Markthal functions. It's also, like the city, really multicultural. There are many Moroccan, Turkish, Antillean, and Hindu traders, which is absolutely fine. So the building is really representing the city. And even politicians notice, you know how politicians like to go to a market with some TV cameras to show the population how popular and normal they have stayed. So our liberal prime minister came to the market hall and showed how popular he is. And then in Markthal, a souvenir shop opened, which is one of the first souvenir shops ever to be opened in Rotterdam. Nobody needed souvenirs of Rotterdam. And now we suddenly had this. We also have shoes of Markthal. And we were all quite shocked and surprised by this. Of course, the project developer, being a real business, they knew that this was going to happen. And in the surrounding of Markthal, there was this rundown building, which was actually a state monument. They bought it for hardly any money. before Markthal opened. Then they renovated it with state funding, and now they rent it out for a good price. And a lot actually happened around the building. This Vapiano restaurant was underperforming and is now really doing well. There's a new hotel that opened, a shopping street was renovated, and the market people outside who were initially against this market hall, they're now very, very happy that it's there, because the closer you are to the entrance of the market hall, the more money you make. Then we made it into all these newspapers. Lonely Planet said Rotterdam is the place to go, and suddenly we had tourists, many tourists. And this is also kind of touching. You see, Markthal became a wedding environment, and really a lot of Turkish people liked the market so much that they started to get married there. It was the marathon went there, and suddenly this poster popped up, and we didn't know anything about it. This is our government. They basically stole our design and our picture and made a poster campaign in the country where they said this building was made possible by teachers. Yes, so teachers made it possible. So they took the credits from us and gave it to our teachers. Fair enough, we thought this is really good, and we didn't sue them for the copyrights, and we're again very flattered that this happens. Then Jamie Oliver said it's big, brave and beautiful and everything is fine. So in the end, here you see Chinese tourists taking a selfie. Markthal in the first year attracted 9 million visitors, instead of the 3.5 million that we had thought would come. 4.5 million of these visitors are tourists. So this one building did a lot for the local tourism, more than we could ever have imagined. And what is most special about it actually is that people like it so much. For our offices also did a lot. When we started Markthal, there was 65 people in our office, and now we are 140. Now suddenly half of our staff is new, and you continuously walk through the office and you see people you don't know. It's really funny. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for your attention. I always talk very, very long. Are there any questions? There's one.
You developed two projects in MVRDV. One of them is MetaCity at the time, the other one is Space Fighter. I was very interested in how you manage data and how you manage information. My question is, how would you put that theory of data and information in your project? Or you manage information?
Yeah, none of these projects really have it in them, but we could, of course, give another presentation about how we do it. We do it a lot in urban planning, where you work with all these parameters that have to be then translated into space. But it's a method that we still do a lot. Yeah. But how we do it, yeah, it depends really on the project. But it starts with research, and that research is then materialized into space. Was that kind of good enough? Yeah.
Yesterday I read in the internet that Roncol has said about Bjarke Ingels that he was the first major architect to have like get rid of angst, you know, like that this series and this yes, that kind of seriousness and that like mood that has been like common in architects and in architecture, and I couldn't help like but hear to all everything you said, like in that key, yeah. Yes, and the key of somehow you have get rid of angst and of seriousness, and you play a lot, but it's a play that's different from postmodern play, yes, and there's a lot of rationality, and there's a lot of I don't know, there's a lot of games, and it's not the same thing as playfulness just for the sake of playfulness, and that's very interesting for me, because I think here in architecture schools, somehow we still have this feeling of seriousness and and we somehow feel that is inherent to decision making and to yes, and I think that's what's most striking about the presentation, that you have a lot of fun doing architecture, and well, that kind of happens, and it has all happened, but there's a difference. So I just wanted to ask you if you agree with that kind of interpretation of the way of making architecture. Like, if there's if do you think that MVRDV is somehow free from this angst, and yes, no, I have like a...
Well, in a way, yeah. I know Remcoa said about Bjarke Ingels that he is free of fear, like a startup in Silicon Valley. He just tackles his discipline in a very free way. I think we are more engaged socially, especially in our urbanism, and so we are not free of that fear, because we engage in extremely serious business. We help cities that underperform a lot in our urbanism. We are really focused on making our buildings perform in a sustainable way, even though we don't think they have to look green. They have to be the best building ever, and then they have to be also green. So no, I think there are really a lot of serious layers in our work. And yes, we make it look easy, and of course we also want to entertain you with our beautiful work and our pictures, but I can tell you that none of it is easy. What we make look easy is actually a lot of fighting with our clients. Our business development team once had this interview round with all our clients to ask how was working with MVRDV, and they all agreed on one thing: the process was pretty tough and sometimes extremely hectic and stressful, because we continuously pushed them, but that the result was fantastic. So they call it, but they're in for a really heavy ride. And then about the fun in architecture, I've been visiting a few of Salmone's buildings. Yes. Is he called Salmone? Yeah, sorry. And I had to laugh so much, and because of the sheer joy and fun that he is radiating in his architecture. I think you also have it in this country.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I walked through the building in Universidad Nacional, and I was really surprised, and I thought, how much fun must he have had designing all these beautiful details. So I think you can do it too.
No, I'm sure. Thank you.
How can we get an internship?
Wait.
How can we get an internship in MVRD?
Well, how can you get an internship? We have 2,500 applications a year for internships. So there are two ways to get through. Either you get a scholarship from somewhere else. So for us, it is economically interesting, but that we still look at your portfolio. So you need to be better than the 2,500 others. And so I would just try it, because you never know. You might be better, just not know it, because what we think is better than the other 2,500 might not necessarily be what you think. So sometimes we see portfolios that are really, we're absolutely impressed by them, and then you see these very silent and modest students arrive, and you think, wow, this is the fantastic portfolio. You see, our architecture is a bit different, so it doesn't matter that your professor says that you're the best. We might have a different idea.
Okay.
So you can apply.
Well.
In a museum, it's a really tough one because the museum is one big air conditioning, because it has 7 different climate zones, because the art needs to have extremely well protected conditions. So what we did is that we insulated the facade in a very, very heavy way, so that at least the outside weather would not interfere with the inside performance. Then we use city heating, so we docked into the block heating system of the city. So this is kind of renewable energy because it's the rest heat from the local industry that is used to heat up the city. But it's not the most sustainable building because it's such a specific program that actually, yeah, you know, to protect all the Rembrandts and Vermeers that are inside. But it was tougher than normal. So in the end, it will be a really good art depot, but not if you compare it to Markthal, for example. It does not have the same kind of sustainability. So let me rephrase it. It's an excellent performance for its own discipline and typology. Anyone else?
¿Más preguntas? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So good. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. Yeah.